Thank you. Ready? All right. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Uh, as you're aware, we had a visit to the commission this morning, a meeting with the People's Progressive Party Civic, a delegation led by its General Secretary, and several other persons, and they met with the entire commission, and the Chief Elections Officer and the Deputy Chief Elections Officer. I must say we had a very cordial meeting. Several of the issues that were raised are already being dealt with. As you're aware, I keep saying every day that it's a dynamic process, and that as issues arise, we make every effort to have those issues resolved, and also it's a ongoing quest for efficiency and timeliness in the process. Immediately after that meeting, we had a meeting of the commission, at which we discussed the issues raised by that delegation, as well as other issues that are touching and concerning our process. One of the major things that came up this morning is the uniformity of information in relation to decisions emanating from the commission. In the vein of me just saying that they were we make decisions, we clarify issues, we reaffirm decisions almost on a daily basis. And sometimes there's a difficulty in passing that information in a uniform and effective way from the commission level all the way down to the workstations and to the supervisors in charge of those workstations. We have taken a decision that there should be a little bit more uniformity in that. Perhaps some of it will be included in writing. And why I say in writing, we keep talking out here about the basket of issues that we have in relation to all of the matters that we have resolved or that have arisen that we have resolved. But some of those issues require more than a mention or a decision being recorded. It requires some elaboration and some detail with which these workstations can operate. And as a consequence, we have taken the decision that some of those decisions will include elaborations which will guide the operations in the workstation. All the parties, it's an issue that was raised by the delegation, and it's something that we have agreed to and have been discussing for quite a while. We know that the 25-day deadline, we're at day 14 or 15 today, almost last count of the days. And as a consequence, the deadline, as we had stipulated, is now looming. We are looking at all the options to speed up the process so that we don't have to seek a deadline that is too far away from that which we originally contemplated. And what are some of those things that we are looking at? We're looking at improving the efficiency as to how the persons actually work in the stations. We are looking at, we are contemplating actively the increase in the number of workstations. And we are also looking at perhaps implementing other measures which will of course speed up the process and perhaps encourage the staff members who are involved in the process to be a little bit more efficient in the process. However, even though we continue to make these changes at a GECOM level so as to speed the process up, what we find that continues to happen is this issue of delays being occasioned in the stations by one particular stakeholder. And You've seen the news is replete with examples of, so in some cases in excess of 100 names or 100 serial numbers are being raised in particular boxes, and these are then included in an observation report. And to what end, I am unsure. But from the face of it, it seems like a deliberate attempt to slow down and or obfuscate this process. And when everyone, I think most of the stakeholders, GECOM, everyone, they, everyone is encouraging us to expedite this process. You are you are faced with this dilemma of deliberate slowdown or actions, which on the face of it, like I said, are clearly designed to slow down or obfuscate the process. And while I'm there, let me touch on this. The issue of the observation reports was one that was raised at the commission, and the chairman had some views. The chairman had some views on it. The chairman said, well, while the observation reports may or may not be considered at some time, what is important arising out of this is the numbers. And I agree with her, because GECOM does not have the legal authority or the wherewithal to deal with those issues. Those are matters that are within the domain of the courts. And I've said that over and over out here. So when you look at it, you ask yourself, what is the reason for this continued efforts to make the process more difficult? Everyone comes here on a daily basis with the best of intention of having this this process move forward, and then you come and face with this, and every day it gets more and more ridiculous. Every day it gets more and more ridiculous. And like I said, nothing is being presented to the commission. You have bald assertions, naked assertions being made to the commission or in the stations. The other issue in the effort of speeding this up, which is a recurring issue, is this close of play issue in relation to the release of boxes. We had previously made a decision that there will be a 5 o'clock shut-off. We have seen the application of that decision did not yield the maximum use of the optimal use of the number of hours allocated for work in the day. As a consequence, there's a lot of interaction, sometimes very unfortunate interactions, between the agents and the containers and GECOM staff and persons who are stationed in workstations, demanding, requesting, whatever you want to call it, boxes, and there was a breakdown. It came to a head day before yesterday, which required intervention of very senior staff. I addressed you on that occasion, I think it was Monday afternoon. And at 6 o'clock, you had 8 of the 10 stations functioning then closed for the day. The 2 other stations closed not so long after that. So what we have decided is that, one, the shut-off time, so to speak, will be shifted to later, but that shut-off time will not be fixed in stone. And any decision in relation to the release of the last box for the day will be in the sole discretion of the Chief Elections Officer, taking into consideration achieving the optimal benefit of the number of hours work allocated for work in each day. So we have done that today, and we're hoping that it is going to be. The only other issue, there are, like I said, a couple of issues that seem recurring, and that ties into the first thing that I raised, because having deliberated and made decisions on particular issues, it's unfortunate that they have to be recurring. Of course, you're seeing nuances or variations of the same issues popping up, which we may require our attention. But by now, perhaps with the exception of contrived issues, the issues have been crystallized for the most part, and we are dealing with them. They are moving, but like I said, you find sometimes that you have to deal with recurring issues, which just slows down the process. And finally, because of the larger number of stations that we are doing, and by extension, the increase in number of boxes that we are processing per day, the tabulation yesterday has been slowed down. So when I said slow down, the time allocated for tabulation, which was previously 4:30, I believe, to 6:30 or 4 to 6:30, it was one time and then we had increased it. Notwithstanding, we considered the matter today and it's now being moved from 3 o'clock, tabulation will start. But that will take effect tomorrow, of course, because it allows, we have allowed its commencement tomorrow to allow for the notification of agents who are involved in the process. We didn't want to have it done today. So those are the issues. Those are the issues that we have considered. We are looking. Everyone is anxious for this process to get done. I'm sure all of you are anxious, like everyone else involved in this process, the nation perhaps, at having this process concluded in as timely and efficient manner as possible, and we're working steadfastly towards that.
Mr. Gurnham, prior to the meeting today with the party and the commission, the party would have written to the commission asking for the removal of a particular staff member whom they allege would have been involved with the theft or an incident at Ashby building, and they complained that he had been promoted to supervisor, linking that incident also to the president's visit. Can you say if this was raised with the commission? And I ask because the secretariat a few minutes ago issued a statement identifying the staffer, saying that he was more or less working diligently and professionally. So I'm wondering if that issue was raised with the commission.
While I don't have the benefit of the press release from the secretariat, I'll get to the issue of a press release in 1 second. Now that you've brought it up, you've reminded me of another issue. I can tell you that outside of the letter that I'm aware that was sent to the chairman on that issue, it was not one of the specific issues that was raised today. And if I can hazard a guess, I'd want to assume that because a letter was previously written, it might not have been on the list of issues that was raised today. But on this issue of a press release and public notification of positions of the commission, one of the issues that was raised today that continues to be a very niggling issue is this issue of the prevention of the Carter Center folks from returning, particularly Carter Center folks from returning, and by Carter Center folks in particular, and overseas observers in general. That issue continues to be a burning issue. But I want to say this very clearly. GECOM, the Guyana Elections Commission, the chairman and commissioners, have done, in our opinion, all that is necessary. We have stated and restated and overstated perhaps that the persons accredited remain accredited. The electoral process is an ongoing one. They were accredited for the electoral process. The electoral process has not concluded. And as a consequence, their accreditation has not expired. They are welcome. The commission has written to the entire cadre of organizations that were part of the electoral observer teams and indicating that, look, this is the position. You remain accredited up to the present time and going forward. That, I believe, is the extent of the power of GECOM. And while I know that the Carter Center and the other electoral observer missions are subtending or their work is related to our work, there's only so much that GECOM can do. And I believe that questions in relation to that are better directed. I mean, we've seen correspondence, etc., at a higher level. But in that regard, I believe that questions are better directed to the persons who are charged with that responsibility.
Has the commission written to the task force on this matter, specifically the card?
I can't tell you with any degree of certainty. But I know that we have publicly said, If my memory serves me correctly, some indication was given to the task force in relation to GECOM's position.
Mr.
Yes.
Conrad, I was told, or we were told earlier, that the commission deliberated a bit on the stamp and ballots. Those were partially stamped as well. Could you tell us what's your understanding of that? If a decision was
A
made.
decision was made on the issue of partially stamped ballots, and a decision was made in relation to partially stamped ballots on stamped ballots because partially stamped were deemed valid, on stamped on invalid. That was the decision that we made at the start of this process. In fact, if I can recall, it might have been the first decision that we made. But today, the issue was raised. There are several factors that we need to consider constructively before we make a definitive decision on it. We have asked the CEO to provide some further information to us, and we have asked for the issues that needs clarifying to be properly adumbrated to us. So I can say that we have not made a decision on it, and we will not make it unless we have those. Well, I don't want to preempt what we will get or what we wouldn't get, but I believe that sometime hereafter we will consider that. Consider it finally on those issues.
With special reference to the joint services, the discipline services.
That's just one of the issues that was considered, that was raised, but it's, you had several in relation to on stamp ballots. You had several sub issues that was raised, and that was one category. It was one category, but it was not.
Mr. Conrad, is it true that GECOM has pushed back the time to open the last ballot box to 5:30? 5:30.
Well, Kimal, that I answered that in my I made a statement on that. We have about while at time, you see, what we are avoiding is to set a firm time, because while 5:30 may work on one day, given a certain set of circumstances, it may not work on another day, given different circumstances. What we are trying to have is the discretion, the sole discretion of the chief elections officer to be the determinant on the ground at the material time for, and the watchword being, for the maximum use of maximum and or optimal use of the allotted time per day.
Let's talk about these observation statements, because minutes ago, Mr. Alexander said that the Commission is waiting on the Secretariat to provide a summation of the observations per region, for the regions that are completed. But I hear you now saying that the Chair is of the view that what's important is the numbers. Can I get some clarity on if there is a decision by the Commission?
There is no decision on the commission by the Commission. You have seen what the order says at section 12 or paragraph 12. What will happen at the end of this process? There will be a concatenation of the observation reports. The CEO has expressed a preference to prepare them as they are done by region. Doesn't matter. There's no accommodation in the. He said, and to use his words, if I am allowed to quote him, he said, "Well, I'm giving it now. Giving the commissioners, I'm giving the agents, I'm giving everybody now because it's finished."
And the Chair expressed the view that that's not GECOM's role to address the observation statements?
It is a position that she has said earlier on when we were discussing the issues touching and concerning that. She said that earlier on, that look, I'm not sure all of this hullabaloo about, I'm paraphrasing here because those are not words that she would use. All this fuss about observation statements, at the end of the day, what matters are the numbers.
That's what the chairman of the
That is the view that the chairman expressed.
said.
Yes.
Was the issue of the, I think earlier in the week we heard about the two ballot boxes that had the incorrect OLEs and ballot boxes outside of those two that had correct OLEs but additional OLEs that were being strange. This, could you say if you would have gotten a recent report? We were told that the presiding officers were summoned yesterday but they didn't show clarify,
I-
provide any information on that?
You have actually added some more information than I have, but I'm gonna break a lance on that. But I can tell you when we met the day before yesterday, the same day that that issue arose, we've put in place series of a series of decisions which we believe will lead to a resolution of that issue. As I stand here, I don't have an update as to whether those decisions were implemented, but I'd rather suspect, because we didn't hear anything again, that it probably would have been resolved. I don't have any of the information that you have in relation to whether person showed up or not. That I was not so informed.
Mr. Gunrad, I was talking to Mr. Alexander just now about the role of GECOM in handling serious matters of criminal fraud where the election is concerned. Given that, 2 months have elapsed since the last Region 4 declaration, and these very serious allegations, for which a lot of evidence has continued to mount, has not even garnered an investigation into this matter. And you have spoken time and time again about GECOM failing to take up the mantle where handling matters of deviance and fraud are concerned. What exactly is GECOM's role here, or the police, or the court, in handling this very serious matter?
Kamal, I prefer to take off my commissioner hat and answer it either as a layman or as a lawyer. I would prefer that the entire body of evidence be collected first before any such action is taken.
During
Or
the recount?
yes, and as you know, the recount process is not yet concluded. It would make little practical sense to me to operate prematurely, or to take some step prematurely. The boys on the street would say, "Don't walk wild." I would prefer to look at the entire body of evidence and the occurrences, anomalies, etc., that have arisen from the process, and to treat with it in a holistic manner rather than a piecemeal manner.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Thank you.